Hey, what's going on, AP peeps? We have one of the most important court cases in U.S. history for you today, Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896. So let's figure out what exactly is going on. This court case will have far-reaching effects for decades and decades and decades to come. Okay, some key ideas before the court case. Let's review really quickly the Reconstruction Amendments, which are the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Remember, the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. The 14th Amendment does many things, which includes granted citizenship to African Americans and defined citizenship for future Americans, and also guaranteed equal protection under the law. And that's going to come into play in this court case, Plessy versus Ferguson. And the 15th Amendment provided suffrage for African American males. And also, we had Jim Crow laws that were predominant in the South, and these were segregation laws in the South. So, this legally required blacks and whites to be segregated or separated in the South. Okay, let's talk about who Homer Plessy is, and let's start with the Citizens Committee. This was a civil rights group in the South, and they wanted to attack or challenge segregation laws in Louisiana. And this whole court case really begins in New Orleans, Louisiana. And they wanted to specifically attack the Separate Car Act, which required equal but separate train cars for blacks and whites. So if you were black, you could not sit in the white section of a train in the South, specifically Louisiana. So Homer Plessy, here is Homer. He is biracial and he lived in Louisiana. So he was picked to specifically challenge this Separate Car Act. And he is arrested for sitting in the first class section of a white train car. And if you go to New Orleans, right in New Orleans in 2009, this plaque was put up where the train station was that Homer Plessy got on, which started the whole court case Plessy versus Ferguson. Okay, so it goes to the Supreme Court. Plessy and the Citizens Committee challenges this and says this is unfair. And Plessy sued, citing the 14th Amendment, which states no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So it's basically saying you can't make any law that takes away people's rights. That is what Plessy's arguing. A Louisiana judge ruled that the state could, in fact, regulate railroads within the state as long as the cars were separate but equal. So it's appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in a 7-1 decision, sided against Plessy, against Homer Plessy, and they sided for Louisiana and upheld that issue of separate but equal. Now, the one lone dissenter was a justice by the name of John Marshall Harlan. Boy, if this guy wasn't destined to be a justice on the Supreme Court, his name is John Marshall, for crying out loud. And here's what he said: in view of the Constitution, in the eye of the law, there is in this country no superior dominant ruling class of citizens. There is no caste here. Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens. In respect of civil rights, all citizens are equal before the law. He was the only one in the Supreme Court that disagreed or went against this decision. He was a man ahead of his time for sure. So, what are the effects of this court case? Well, Jim Crow laws are now officially upheld by the Supreme Court. And this doctrine of separate but equal will remain in effect for 58 years until 1954 with the court case Brown versus the Board of Education, which I will do a video on. So please make sure to check that out as well. And you will see this all throughout the South, that there are these separate facilities for whites and blacks. And these facilities would be labeled as colored waiting rooms, colored drinking fountains, colored bathrooms, you name it. There were separate facilities, and it would be illegal for an African American to use a white facility. And in reality, of course, these separate facilities were not equal. Here's a cartoon from 1904 by John McCutcheon, who kind of satirized how these facilities are not equal whatsoever. You see a car for white folks, which is very nice, and then a Jim Crow car, which is crumpled up and looks pretty beat up. Plessy versus Ferguson was finally overturned in 1954, and 1964 was extended even further. 1954's Brown versus the Board of Education, and 1964's Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes segregation illegal. All right, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully that clarified lots of information on Plessy versus Ferguson. Please take a moment and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. Help me spread the word. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the section below. in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys watching, and have a good day.